Now, tough times, no doubt, await the Nigerian currency and its economy as the country's external reserves fell below $40 billion threshold, making it the lowest in over 3 months. According to the latest data by the Central Bank of Nigeria, the nation's external reserves level as at Thursday, 3rd February 2022, fell to $39.98 billion. The data also shows that the reserves has been on a good run since October 2021 after CBN took receipts of IMF special drawing rights of $3.5 billion and also a successful issuance of $4 billion Eurobond. But pressure from the foreign exchange market coupled with weak dollars coming from all sales forced the Apex Bank to rely on external reserves to defend the naira. However, with the consistent decline of reserves and the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited not showing signs of fixing its crude oil production challenges, the naira could face devaluation in the coming weeks. So that word devaluation, as we go on, I will understand Mr. Biodun's view about this. To discuss this, he's live in the studio. He's an economist and he's also the tax manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Mr. Biodun Kayode Ali. It's good to have you here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. Something that a lot of hard times or tough times awaits Nigeria's currency. Looking at this drop from about 40 billion, more than 40 billion, and now we're doing about 39 million. Now, what's your forecast with regards to this? Because we're not going to have SDRs again this anytime soon, and we're not also going to have any. I don't think there's any bond. Are we issuing any bond anytime soon?
I don't think so.
So, what do you think this means for us?
Okay. Thank you for having me once again, Tolu. So, like you rightly said, the decline actually moved from $40 billion to about 39.98.
Yeah.
And my take on it is simply, like you said, it's the SDR and it's the Eurobond that was issued last year that actually took it from about $35 billion to about $40 billion, right? And that decline, though I think it's marginal, right? That decline, I think it's just government trying to make use of the funds, right? The purpose for which it borrowed, it's just trying to make use of the funds. That's what I think simply. So if you look at it in the past, right, our reserves has been doing something around the average of $35 billion. That's what it has been. And if not for that, those borrowings, you won't have seen it move to that extent. So what are the factors that generally cause an increase in our reserves, right? So you have to look at what is called the balance of payments, right? Now, this balance of payments, what it simply refers to is you are looking at all the receipts you are getting from abroad, right? The totality of all the money you receive from abroad, and you're looking at all the payments you make, right? So if there is a surplus, that surplus is what feeds into your external reserves, right? And the external reserves is actually being used by the monetary authority to sometimes defend the currency and also to carry out some specific projects. Now, one thing that is important, which the IMF has said, is that a developing country should have an import cover, right? Should be able to at least cover its import bills.
8 months, right?
The IMF recommendation is actually 3 months, but Nigeria's reserves, as it stands right now, can take us for about 8 to 10 months.
8 to 10 months.
Yeah, so it's really nothing to worry about. It's actually
fair enough.
Yes, it is.
So we can go to sleep. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think we're fine. I don't think there's any cause for alarm. I think we're fine. And there's one other important thing that we need to make mention of, and it's that the figure you're actually seeing from the CBN's website, it's actually a moving average. It's a 30-day moving average. Okay. It's not even the real figure, right? So the real figure, the actual, you could probably see it when the CBN releases its quarterly reports, right? The Q3 report is out, so when the Q4 report comes out, we get to know the actual figure. But I don't think it's any cause for concern since we can maintain about 8 months import cover. I don't think it's anything to be worried about.
There is an extension of subsidy regime, which we know what that takes away from us when it has to do with forex, and also we are servicing debts both locally and foreign. Do you think this also spells any form of? Are you worried about this?
Well, I'm not, and the reason why I'm not worried, actually, to some extent I am, but I'm also not worried. Now, let me start with the first one. What gives me the worry is that, the Petroleum Industry Act was signed into law in 2021, August 2021,
yes.
and it was designed to actually increase participation in the oil and gas sector, to bring in foreign direct investments, which is something we need direly, right? And the decision of the government to change its mind, I saw the news when the senator announced that the president never approved for the removal of the subsidy, it looked shocking, right? But to some extent,
it's in the law. It's in the law. He doesn't have to approve that separately.
Yeah, that's quite correct. To some extent, we're thinking, would they have that strong will to take that decision? But you can also sympathize with them. I also understand where they are coming from, all right? So that's the concern in that aspect, because foreigners would begin to think, can they really bring in their money and not expect any form of change in government policy again, right? Because every foreigner is looking for certainty and is looking for that government confidence, right? That's one aspect that worries me. But the other aspect, right, which I spoke about, this subsidy, if you think about it, the subsidy had been in place in previous years.
It has.
Right? It had been in place in previous years. And it's not like we've gone drastically below that 35 billion naira average, which we've always seen.
Yes, despite all of the payments.
Despite all the subsidy, right? And I think I saw a report recently that said that 500 billion has actually been provided for in the 2022 budget, right? So the 3 trillion that is needed, we need 2.5 trillion more to support it. So I don't think there's any cause for concern. One thing I just see is that as long as we're able to produce, and as long as we're able to sell, because there is the advantage we have. The price of crude oil in the global market is actually quite interesting. In fact, people are speculating it's going to hit $100.
I'm waiting. So seriously, I'm waiting.
Yeah, so people are speculating it's going to hit $100, but I think the problem now has to do with our production levels.
Yeah.
I mean, shockingly, production has actually been on the decline.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we're producing something around 1.2 million barrels per day, 1.2, 1.3. And if you consider this is not the time to be producing something low, then if you also want to consider some of these international oil companies like Shell has decided to defer its investment in the Bonga Southwest oil field, right? So most of these international oil companies, they are even shifting from fossil fuels, right? And Nigeria had actually hoped that with Shell's investment in that Bonga Southwest field, that we could probably ramp up production to something around 3 million barrels per day by 2023.
Wow.
But sadly, that's not the case. That's deferred it for like 2 years. So this is the only concern that worries me, that our production levels are actually low, despite the fact that crude oil prices are rising. So we're not really taking advantage of this rising global crude oil prices. So I just think if things continue this way, we will be somewhere within that $35 billion reserve. That's where I see our reserves being, except something out of the ordinary happens before the end of the year. Honestly,
I'm really worried about that, about $90 per barrel, and now we are doing 1.2 million on daily basis. But let's stay with issues around Forex. Let's think out of the box now. You know, we've talked so much about Forex issues. How well can we incentivize talking about diaspora remittances and all of that at this time? Especially, many still say economic recovery for 2022. Though to me, I feel it's looking fair. At least a little bit of the COVID issue, both internationally and locally, we can see the figures dropping. So what do you think? What can be done to attract more from the guys over there?
Okay, that's a good point you made mention of. The diaspora remittance, that's been one of the major inflows that Nigeria has had. And it actually fell as a result of the pandemic and events. I think before we're doing about we're getting inflows of about $24 billion, but I think recently somewhere around $14 billion. What can we do to attract more diaspora inflow? So I think the diaspora bond that was being issued by the federal government, I think it was a good initiative. I think one other important thing that we need to do is that there probably needs to be more awareness, more communication, right? And there needs to be an improvement even at home, right? So we understand that the diaspora, those of our brothers and sisters abroad, they are the suppliers of the dollar, but you want to encourage although you might want to tie that that emotion to coming back home as a way of them remitting, but it's beyond that. I think we need to do some things even within our economy. They need to be able to see that indeed that these monies are going to be put into good use. They need to have that confidence as well that the government is determined to do what it has said it's going to do. Right. So I think that communication and different stakeholder meetings with the members in the diaspora, I think that will be very helpful. Then I think one other important thing is we probably need to do something about the exchange rate system.
Yes, right? I was going there too, honestly.
Okay, because with respect to, if I combine the two, the communication as well as the exchange rate system, I think it will help to change perception of a lot of people abroad, Nigerians abroad, because they think to themselves, why do they want to go through any form of hassle in trying to send money to their families down here, right? I was speaking to someone recently and he was telling me that it's just cheaper for him to speak to someone in Nigeria who probably has a need over there, and if he wants to send money to his own family, they just talk to themselves, right? They agree a rate between themselves. These are things that are going outside the CBN's monitoring purview, right? The CBN is not able to see these transactions, and we need these inflows, right? So I think it's very important we address the multiple exchange rate system so that there is not much of a concern, and also the process, the mechanism for sending down your money, right? We need to do it in such a way that the costs that is being borne, because I think there is a charge anytime they try to send money through the IMTOs. I think there's a charge that they bear. So if we can simplify these processes, communicate better, right, and remove this multiple exchange rate system, I think it will have a better impact in terms of getting diaspora remittances into the country.
Because we see a lot of initiatives. Even at the time there was the I think Naira for dollar. A lot of initiatives we've seen being instituted by the Central Bank of Nigeria, but the effects, I don't know if I have to rate it, if I have to go what percentage. I'm still thinking of sectors like aviation, manufacturing now. They are saying that what they are getting is not even enough. They will tell you request for, say, $10,000, just an example, and you're getting maybe 1,000 or 2,000. What do you think will be happening to all of these sectors? How would their performance be as we move on in the year?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I think it's quite sad. It's quite sad. The aviation industry that you made mention of, I look at that sector, and if you consider most of their costs, right, most of their costs are coming from imported items, right? You're talking of aviation fuel, which covers about 30% of their cost. We're talking about the spare parts that they use. They can't get them locally. They have to import them from abroad. The maintenance costs, getting technicians to do all these things. It's quite sad, and I think something actually does need to be done. Right, I know most of the time when they want to get forex, they have to probably go through. Would it be okay if I use the word lobby with the CBN to get forex at their own rate, right? And for the orders that they can't get from the CBN, they have to go to the parallel market to source for forex, which is quite it's quite strenuous on their bottom line, right? Because it's going to increase their costs, right? So I think it's something the government probably needs to look into, right, with respect to them. Then for the manufacturing sector, I think one thing that is important is, because the manufacturing sector, most of the cost has to do with inputs. I think one important thing that we need to consider, or manufacturers need to consider, is backward integration. I know most of them are actually doing something like that. If you consider companies like Okomu Oil, right, Okomu Oil Presco, oil processing companies, I was reading recently the profit after tax of Okomu Oil, 14 billion naira, right, and I think that's quite impressive. So what they've done is that they decided to carry out a backward integration, try and assist farmers. The farmers plant the oil plants, right, and they are able to process it, and it helps. It also saves Nigeria from depleting its external reserves. So I think it's something manufacturers need to consider. But then you would want to look at even the farmers themselves. What type of farming technique are they using? Most of them are still using the subsistence farming techniques, right? And I think Nigeria, we need to do something about subsistence farming. I think we need to. The CBN is doing a lot. I give it to the CBN,
a lot.
But I think we need to probably upgrade such that we can go into mechanized farming. I think it's going to go a long way, right? I was reading recently about Kenya, right? I learned Kenya in 2021 was able to export tea right from mechanized agriculture. They were able to export tea, and they got about $1.2 billion in 2021. I think we could do something similar. All right, most of the products that we actually do export, they are raw, right? So we need to add more value to them. For the manufacturing sector, if as much as possible, they need to look back, carry out that backward integration. I think it will help. Then those commodities that are absolutely essential. I think I know the CBN gave that ban in 2015, right? The 41 items.
41 items.
But I think to some extent, if there is really nothing that can be done with respect to getting raw materials, sourcing raw materials locally, I think there should be a kind of incentive that should be given to these manufacturers until we become self-reliant. I think that's just the best way to go. I think it's wrong to impose a restriction when you can't even get exactly, you can't get your local resources. Yeah.
Well, let's wrap up on this note. Structural reforms, a lot of talks about structural reforms, and a lot of it, subsidy issues, we've talked about all of that, but in your thoughts, what are your projections? Short term, mid term, and of course, long term as we move on. Don't forget, this is a pre-election year. That is why some analysts are very worried about some decisions of government.
Well, I think this subsidy issue would never go away. We'll just keep talking about it, right? And
not very soon.
Not very soon at all. So I think it's important for the incoming people, the politicians who are vying for the post of president and who are vying for other leadership posts. I think there's something they need to start considering. I think most of the debates that we have, right, I think we need to start discussing economic issues because, like you rightly said, this government, this administration, this is his last year,
yes,
right? Whoever is going to take over the baton from this administration, they are going to have to deal with these issues. Will they be able to take that that bold step to carry out the reforms that are needed? Because I was reading sometime about I think the former emir of Kano, Sanusi, saying something about Nigeria is we're actually working an extra time or something like that.
Yes.
I think it's quite important we start bringing these issues to the fore. It's going to be a very difficult task for the next administration. It's going to be a very difficult one, but it's something they have to do. You can't keep kicking down the can down the road. It's something they just have to do.
It's always interesting having you on set. Thank you so much, Mr. Biodun Kayode Ali. He's an economist and a tax manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Thank you so much for making sense of this very important topic. I also learned something, and I'm sure our viewers learned a lot.
Thank you for having me.